sea of darkness where there is much weeping and gnashing of the teeth. What does this mean, universe, within me? And give it to me in a way of language, in a way of language that I can apply to my own life, and in a way that I can teach so that you can apply it to your life. And here's what I came up with. Not what I came up with, but what was expressed and revealed through me. That first of all, there is only one power. It is omnipotent. And that means all power. It doesn't mean sometimes it's power. It doesn't mean it's more power than this power. It doesn't mean it's a power other than that other power. It means all power. It means there is no other power. There is no otherness. And its nature is also omnipresent, meaning it is present everywhere in its totality at every point in the universe. And it is omniscient, all wisdom, all divine intelligence, all knowing. I love that. Because Joel Goldsmith said that's your only prayer. Omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence. Feel that. Then what is that discord that you're experiencing? It must be illusion. Is that right? So it is impossible in this omnipotent, omniscience, and omnipresence for this group over here to be excluded because of the color of their skin, because of their religious beliefs, because they're a pregnant 16-year-old, because they're a drug addict, because they've made mistakes, because they were not absolutely perfect today, whatever that means. That they would be excluded from the kingdom of heaven, and this group over here included. First of all, the kingdom of heaven is not a place. It's a state of consciousness that we all have access to, that is nearer than our hands and feet, closer than our breathing. It is our home. It is our birthright. It is our divine inheritance. It is the truth of who you are. Take a breath. Just breathe in. If you focused on that 3 or 4 times a day for 7 days, at the end of the week, you're going to be dead. Yeah, what? If you just focused on that, man, that dissolves any and everything unlike it. I'm telling you what I know. Because I do this kind of work. And I'll tell you why I do this kind of work. But first, I want to tell y'all a little bit about you. Because when I went within to this presence and power to find out about me, it actually told me about you. So I'm going to talk about y'all. Not too bad, but I'm going to talk about you a little bit. So here's what I found out, is that we want to be invited to the party. In fact, we set up the party. We said, this is what I want to grow into. This is what I want. And you show up for the party, but you find out that you're turned away because you're not properly dressed. So you want to show up for the peace that passes understanding and the freedom, but you want to hold on to your addiction of resentment and your stories. And your resentment and your story is incongruent with the freedom and the peace that passes understanding. That is your nature, that is your divine birthright, but you cannot connect to. You want to call forth lavish prosperity and abundance, but you want to stay small in your addiction to struggle and worry and doubt and uncertainty. And it's not a vibrational match. So then what happens is we become discouraged and we feel powerless and we feel hopeless. And we spin ourselves out in our own consciousness into a sea of darkness where there is much weeping and gnashing of the teeth. That is the only place where the weeping and gnashing of the teeth happens, is in our own unillumined minds. And trust me, we're not unillumined or unconscious because we're doing that on purpose. We're doing that because you forgot who you were created to be. You forgot. Joel Goldsmith says we suffer from hypnotism. You've been hypnotized into believing that you are less than the fulfillment of God, full expressions of this one power, this one presence, this one life. And there's some of you who just say, I ain't going to the party at all. I'm not going to a feast. And I remember 26 years ago when I was extended my most significant invitation. And it showed up at my house in this beautiful ivory-colored envelope. And it said, Esther, you are cordially invited to attend a life free from drug addiction and alcoholism. You're cordially invited to attend a life of wholeness and walking in your own brand of dignity and self-love and self-awareness. And that invitation showed up in my consciousness like a flash. In an instant, just for an instant, I saw myself the way God sees me. I saw myself as whole, as perfect, as complete, as walking in my brand of dignity, walking in freedom. How many of you caught a glimpse of who you are? Yeah. But then you shut it down immediately, haven't you? Because you're afraid. I don't know how to pull that off, so maybe in a couple of years, but not right now. And that's exactly what I did. I shut it down with denial. And I said, wait a minute, I'm cool just the way I am. I'm not an addict or an alcoholic. I just need to do better drugs. I staggered. I just need to do them at Christmas or on weekends. And so I threw that ivory-colored invitation on the desk with all of the other unanswered mail and declined invitations. How many of you have a desk or a closet or a trunk or a garage full of unattended situations? Declined invitations. And if it's not in a physical place, where is it being stored in your consciousness? The not nows. I can't. Well, maybe if that happens, maybe if you change, then I'll change. How many of you have those places stored in your consciousness? Those declined invitations. I noticed one hand. I noticed. But then what happened is the pink invitation came. And it said, Esther, it's highly suggested that you attend a life free from drug addiction and alcoholism, that you attend a life of remembering who you are, beloved. You are mine. And who I am well pleased, sweetheart, no matter what you've done. And this invitation showed up in my life as my being fired, terminated for maybe my 6th job in a 4-month time period, and my utilities being disconnected once again. I looked at that invitation, and I said, if only all of my employers would have gotten the memo that every Monday is a holiday. And all the utility companies would just understand that I'm a single mother after all and give me another break. And so I threw that pink invitation on the desk with all of the other unattended to mail and declined invitations. But here's the thing about the divine invitation. It's the divine discontent, the divine impulse within us that's saying, it's time for you to grow. You've outgrown this situation. It's time for you to be bigger than you recognize yourself to be. And it's a lot like the IRS. It doesn't stop showing up because you ain't ready to deal with it. It doesn't stop showing up because you want to ignore it. And the only reason you're not ready to deal with it, and the only reason you ignore it, is because you've forgotten your identity as an expression of God. Because when you remember, when you wake up to who you are, you're like, let's go. I'm ready. So you haven't forgotten because you're a bad person. No, we're not talking about you. You've declined the invitation because you're a frightened person. You're frightened of your own magnificence. You're frightened to grow into the unknown. Well, then, the red invitation has to show up. And the red invitation showed up and said, Esther, I will not take no for an answer, and you will return to your true identity of who you are. Stop this madness of lack of limitation, of playing small. You will not do this. And this invitation showed up in my life as my looking at an emaciated body from years of drug addiction in the mirror, and my family knocking on my door to remove my daughter from an unfit environment. My daughter holding onto my leg, saying, Mommy, please don't let them take me. When can I see you again, Mommy? Please don't let me take you. And he's saying, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. But I looked at that invitation, and I finally said, take me. I surrender. Thy will be done. But I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be bigger than what I'm accustomed to being. I don't know how to see myself other than the way I've seen myself all these years. Can you relate to that? Yes. That you don't know how to see yourself other than the way you've always been seeing yourself? Yes. I heard the universe say, but I see you. I know. You just take a step. And I was like, but I have nothing to wear to my party. I have nothing to wear to the feast. And the universe said, absolutely, yes you do. Go in that closet. And there was this one raggedy red dress hanging in the closet. But it was a designer dress by this famous designer called Willingness. They were these turned over, raggedy shoes. But they were created by this famous designer called Surrender. And I slipped into my shoes of surrender and I put on my dress of willingness. And there were days when I crawled to my feast. I crawled. Because it took all of that to remember that I was worthy of the feast. And there were days when I wanted to turn back because I was used to the misery. I wasn't used to the feast. And the universe just kept saying, come on, baby. Come on. I got you. One more step. Come on. And I made it to my party. I made it to the feast. And I stayed. And I stayed dressed. And my dress of willingness, and my shoes of surrender. And I was guided and directed each step of the way. I didn't have to figure it out. And that is why I can stand before you today with 26 years of sobriety. Yay. Now I know that there are those of you here today saying, what is she talking about? I am not an alcoholic and an addict. I don't know anything about drugs or alcohol. And I'm like, that's cool. Maybe you don't. Because addiction is only a symptom. Addiction is the manifestation of a much deeper cause. Addiction is, the foundation of that is based in the false belief that you are separate and apart from that which created you in its image and likeness. And so it doesn't matter how the addiction manifests. If it manifested as drugs or alcohol, or if it manifested as something else. An addiction is when you have lost the power to choose. So you may not be addicted to drugs and alcohol, you may not have ever had that experience, but I know you can relate to being addicted to fear. I know you can relate to being addicted to drama and your story and struggle and procrastination. How many of you are addicted or have been addicted to being in a relationship? Yeah. Because, and there's nothing wrong with being a vibrational match of wholeness with a beloved. But when you're trying to be in a relationship from a place of woundedness, what happens? But you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. You keep bringing your own self to the party before you got dressed. How many of you are addicted to thinking that something outside of you is your security? And so you hold on to it even though you're miserable, even though you've outgrown it. You hold on to it saying, well, you know, that's my paycheck. That's my security. And as long as you're thinking that something else is your security outside of you, the universe has no choice but to give you the invitation. Because you must return to your identity. So 7 years ago, when I was with Rod Stewart, and I received the Ivory invitation, by now I knew what it meant. And I was like, oh no! I'm not leaving my gig with Rod Stewart. I'm not doing it. That's how I talk to the universe. I'm not doing it. I'm just bored. I'm just a little bored. And if you hadn't listened to Rod Stewart sing Maggie May one more time, you want to sing your song. If you just change up the set list a little bit, I can hang in there for a couple more years. I can just meditation up on the desk. And then the pink one came. And it said, Esther, you are a licensed spiritual practitioner. You have released your first inspirational